One of my favorite consoles when I worked in the video game industry was this guy right here, the Nintendo DS. I loved this machine. I thought it was a fantastic idea, and it was the perfect exemplary way to show that Nintendo thinks outside the box. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Square Pegs. I'm Jay. Glad you're here. Today we're looking at 10 games on the Nintendo DS that I feel are underrated and overlooked. Ones that I think people just don't give enough shine to, that people really need to play. For some reason, this console is often overlooked as a great way to play games, or a great source of great games, because I don't know whether people just think it was for kids or they just didn't like the two-screen form factor. I'm not sure, but I'm here to show you that 10 games on this list are amazing, and you should be playing them.
Yes, you are seeing Hatsworth footage, and no, I am not going to say you should play Hatsworth. You already know you should play Hatsworth. I worked on it. I think it's the best DS game you've never heard of, and you should play it. But I'm just going to use this background footage right now to kind of set up the video a little bit. So about a week ago, I got a comment on one of my shorts where I talked about 10 DS games that everyone should play, and I was told that I didn't show off anything that anyone should play. It was all stuff that only the Metacritic talked about, and of course that's not true because Hatsworth is in there, and I worked on it. No one bought the game. I know no one bought the game. So yeah, it's not something that everyone has already played. So I'm using this as an opportunity to kind of show off some more obscure titles. There are going to be a few things I've talked about in here before in the past. You'll understand when you see them, but I think these are games that are like legitimately exciting and legitimately fun on the DS that really take advantage of what the system was capable of. Additionally, as you guys know, whenever I show off DS footage, this was captured on an emulator, so if you see a mouse pointer come on screen, that is when I am using the touchpad of the DS. So just understand what's going on there. This is the easiest way to show off the footage and the best way to show off the footage. So without further ado, let's kick things off with a game from Nintendo themselves. Starting off, I feel pretty strong here with the legendary Starfy. Now, this is a game that we've seen the GBA games that were strictly released in Japan, released on the Nintendo Switch Online service. This was the only one we actually got here in the States, and it's an excellent little platformer. It's full of charm. It's very funny. It's definitely a game that is skewed more for a younger audience, so it's not terribly challenging, but it's something where you're going to kind of get immersed in the world of Starfy, and you're going to get immersed in the humor and the creativeness that they use to kind of show off what the game is capable of and what the overall design aesthetic is. I think it's adorable, and I think it's charming. One of the things I really like about it is the fact that it's not necessarily required to use the touchscreen. You can, obviously, if you need to. You can use that for like asset management or inventory and stuff like that, but you can just play on the top screen if you really want to, which makes me feel that this was originally a GBA game that just kind of came out late and then got turned into a DS game, but it's something where I still find it incredibly charming, and there's some really incredible graphics and looks in this game. Like it feels like something that should have been on Nintendo's 32-bit platform that never existed, if you know what I mean. So really dig this one. I think it's a lot of fun, and I don't know a ton of people that have played it outside of like me and Biddy Kong. I'm a big fan of Brick Breakers, going all the way back to the first time I played Breakout on the Atari 2600, I think at my cousin's house. It might have been in an arcade, I'm not sure, but it was a genre I really liked then. It's a genre I still really like today, and Arkanoid DS on the, shocker, Nintendo DS, since that's what the video is about, is a really good iteration of that game. And I think it's something that makes use of both screens very cleverly. So you're going to be bouncing the ball off the bottom screen up to the top screen like you would expect. And other than that, it's basically standard Arkanoid. You have boosts on the shoulder buttons, or you can use the stylus to move your character or the paddle around, and you're going to be able to collect power-ups to actually eliminate the different blocks that are on screen. It's very easy to understand. It's something that's been done a million times. It's just done incredibly well in this particular release. I find this one to be really fun, and I think there were a lot of games on the DS that kind of adapted what their classic gameplay elements were and made use of both screens to really kind of breathe new life into the IP, and this is one of those with Arkanoid. Man, I would have bet money when the original Spectrobes released that this would have been a massive success for Disney Interactive. And then, of course, Disney Interactive went belly up, and Spectrobes was not a massive success. In fact, it's a forgotten franchise that makes me sad because I thought it was incredibly clever. So it's kind of a space-aged Pokemon where you're collecting characters based on fossils you dig up, and I think that's pretty awesome. The gameplay is really fun and really simple to understand. You have different characters, they have different abilities, and when you get into a fight, you're going to control each of your monsters that are on screen with different buttons on your DS. And when you need to find a different fossil, I think that's where the real cleverness comes in, because you're going to use your different characters that you have that are going to be trailing you in the world, use their abilities to scan for fossils, and when you find them, you have to use the stylus to kind of dig for those fossils and clean them off to be able to extract them and then hatch them, basically. It's a really fun game. It's really, really well designed. It plays incredibly well, and it's just something that I find to be a really, really advantageous use of what the DS is capable of. There was another DS game as well as a Wii game that released in the Spectrum series, and that was it. And again, I think it's a shame. I think it could have been a big deal, and it just wasn't, unfortunately. Based on the original Thor movie from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Thor was developed by WayForward, and I think this is one of the best examples of platforming on the Nintendo DS, because it is something that is creatively using both screens. So while most of the game is going to take place on the bottom screen, and that's totally fine, like it's easy to understand, it's easy to play, and it's something that doesn't make use heavily of touchscreen elements or anything like that, where the game really kind of sets itself apart. And if it wasn't for something like Yoshi's Island DS, which really took advantage of both screens and kind of showed off the real estate that was in play and almost kind of a Tate mode widescreen, Thor does that too, because you're going to be actively moving to the top screen and fighting up there as well. And you're going to need to aim Mjolnir to attack enemies that are up top that are shooting you from range. It's a very, very creatively done game, and something that I don't hear a ton of people talk about, which is unfortunate because it's spectacular. It's a really strong title, and unfortunately it has the stigma of being from a time when a lot of the Marvel licensed games were really, really goddamn bad. It's a shame, because this one is really, really good. Easily one of the weirder concepts for a video game I've ever played. Little Red Riding Hood's Zombie Barbecue is just kind of a fever dream of a video game that I have to thank my friend Corey for introducing me to. Basically what it is it's kind of an on-rail shooter where you're able to move Red Riding Hood left or right on the bottom of the screen. You can also play as the woodsman, and you have different weapons that you're going to fire at the zombies that are coming on screen. That's all there really is to it. It's a very simple and easy to understand game, and I think that's where its genius really lies, because it makes heavy use of the touchscreen, so it's actively engaging in like features that are exclusive to what the DS was capable of at the time. It does it incredibly well, and it takes a character like Little Red Riding Hood that you wouldn't expect to be in a zombie killing game with machine guns and lasers and flamethrowers, unless you're a big fan of BB Hood from the Darkstalker series, and it makes it a really approachable and easy to understand game, and I really do feel that is where the genius of Little Red Riding Hood Zombie Barbecue is. Really, really weird game, but really, really fun, and something that I feel is something that really takes advantage of what the DS is capable of. Love being able to play on both screens. I just think that's really cool. I love steampunk as a genre, and personally I do think it's something that should be mined heavily for video game usage, and we've had some really, really good games that delve into kind of that steampunk ethos with things like the Dishonored series or Strange Brigade. There's some really excellent titles out there that lean heavily into it, and other ones I'm forgetting off the top of my head. One on the DS that I really want to call out here is Nostalgia. Nostalgia is a turn-based RPG that takes place back in the 19th century where your dad is basically like Alan Quatermain, and he disappears, and you as Eddie have to go and find him. And it takes you to various different locations throughout the world. There's also airship combat, which is really cool. I didn't capture any of that, unfortunately, but it's a really interesting game that takes a lot of different gameplay elements and puts it into this really exciting genre and really well-designed genre of steampunk. The turn-based RPG elements are well executed, the gameplay is fun, the writing is solid, the music is wonderful. It's a really, really interesting title and something that I feel is excellent on the Nintendo DS. Originally a mobile title, so we kind of see that initial experience of Nintendo bringing in mobile games that we now heavily feature on the Nintendo Switch. Orcs and Elves was published by EA, but developed by id Software and Fountainhead Entertainment. This is a really clever game. This is an old school dungeon crawler, and it feels like it stepped out of the 1980s. Like, this reminds me heavily of the dungeon crawling aspects of The Bard's Tale, which was the first role-playing game I ever played. I adore this game. It is so well made and so incredibly well designed that you just fall into it. Now, if you're not a fan of dungeon crawlers, you're going to hate the hell out of this game. But as someone who really likes that genre of game and feels it's kind of underrepresented in modern games, Orcs and Elves is something that I think a lot of people would really, really like if they gave it the time of day. The graphics look really good. The story is intriguing. The inventory management being on the touchscreen is very well implemented, even if it's kind of expected based on other games that have released on the DS. I really do think that this is a strong title and something that's a loving throwback to classic gaming of the 80s, but just works so incredibly well on the Nintendo DS. So when I first moved to Michigan in 2009, the first time I lived in Michigan, I bought a comic book at the local comic shop here called Fanfare. And on the back cover of the comic was an ad for a game called The Glory of Heracles by Nintendo. And as someone who is a big Greek mythology fan, I was like, oh, Nintendo making a Greek myth game. I got to get that one. And when I picked it up, I got something that I was not expecting. So first off, I had no idea that this was a continuation of a series that started on the original Famicom. It's a game that is a clever RPG, and I say clever because it is a really well-designed RPG, and it's clever in that it's humorous. It's a very funny game with some very clever writing. It's a little bit dated in places, so be aware of that. There are some cultural references that are a little bit insensitive, but it's okay. It's still a really solid game. The gameplay is wonderful. It's a turn-based RPG. The different characters you meet are really fun, including the imposter Heracles. Or Hercules. He's actually Hercules, you're Heracles. But spoilers if you haven't played it. I just really enjoy this one. And I think it's a very well-designed game with some really creative gameplay elements and something that I just think is a brilliant continuation of that original Famicom series. I know I am guilty of overlooking and underrating this game. This is Thundercats based on the mid-2000s animated series, and I'm guilty of overlooking it and underrating it because I didn't know it existed until like 2 years ago, and that's a shame because this game's amazing. This is very, very much akin to something like Lady Sia on the GBA, where it's kind of a side-scrolling hack and slash. Endless waves of enemies. You're playing as Lion-O. You can tag in the other Thundercats as well and just slice and dice your way through, and it is absolutely fantastic. If you're a fan of the Thundercats from the 80s, you probably won't like this, but as someone who wasn't a huge fan of the Thundercats from the 80s, but really, really liked the early 2000s series, because it was better, I said what I said, this game is magnificent and is a wonderful, wonderful addition to a DS library. Went completely under my radar, had no idea it existed, and so glad that I decided to try it out based on like one singular recommendation that I saw from someone on Reddit. Absolutely magnificent game and something that more people should play rather than just bypassing it because of its license. I make no apologies for liking Dragon Quest Heroes Rocket Slime, even though it is silly, even though it is goofy, even though it is a ridiculous concept. It's something that I look at and I go, yep, this is just fun. This is just great. It is a wonderful kind of goofy addition to the Dragon Quest universe, which is already a goofy universe to begin with. But this one, let's face it, you're playing as a slime, you're playing as the cannon fodder of the Dragon Quest universe. It's going to be silly, and silly it is. So the game is basically split into different stages. In each stage, you are going to be controlling Rocket and going around and using his different abilities to free the different slimes that are in each stage, find treasures to send back to your village, and that's it. It's a little bit of light puzzle solving, it's a little bit of simple platforming and simple combat or simple kind of environmental destructions using your abilities, but it's not something that is really overly complex. There's tank battles in the game as well that aren't terribly complex, but they're fun. It's just a game that kind of revels in its silliness and revels in the fact that this is a game starring a slime from Dragon Quest. It works. It's a ton of fun. I wish this was a more popular franchise. Like, I know how revered Dragon Quest is, but particularly the Rocket Slime series, I wish that was a more well-loved franchise because I would love to have significantly more games in this series. But here in the States, this is what we got. But it's well worth playing.
Let me know in the comments down below, what DS games do you think are overlooked and underrated? I'd love to hear from you. If there's any I didn't mention in this list, please be sure to call them out. Until next time, folks, I've been Jay. Appreciate you spending some time with me today. If you enjoyed today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you really liked it, consider subscribing. And until next time, play more games and stay square.